Okay.
So let's move on. Good old Grant started a little bit of a wave this weekend when he started talking about, the punt returner. And I think something that is overlooked a lot in the 49ers is the special teams isn't necessarily the strongest when you look at it. Obviously we have a pretty automatic kicker, but that's only 40 yards and closer. We don't have really a stretch field goal kicker that's going to be pretty consistent outside of 40 yards. And then our punt game is just so bleak. We are the kings of the fair catch. And Kyle Shanahan is just extremely conservative as far as, the return game. So I wanted to talk about, in a perfect world, if the 49ers did have any type of return game, how do you think that would affect the overall play of the team? Would it enhance it? Do you think it'd bring it back? And then touch on why you think Shanahan is just so conservative in special teams.
Well, just have a better kick return game. It just helps out the offense because instead of being stuck starting every offensive possession at your own 25-yard line, or just having fair catches all the time inside your own 20, whatnot, where you've got to go full fields. If you can get some punt returns, that really is going to help you out. That was one of the things back in 2011 that really helped the 49ers out, was they had Ted Ginn returning kicks, punts. And they had some big punt returns, which really helped set them up. And that's something that the 49ers haven't seen a whole lot of during Kyle Shanahan's time. Some of that is partly due to, he doesn't really have a really good punt returner that he's utilizing. I mean, I would like to see him put Aiyuk back there to return punts myself, but I don't expect to see him do that because that's just not the way he handles it. So, it's interesting because I saw the discussion. So I went and looked at it. The 49ers actually returned the ball average 9 yards per punt return in 2021, which was better than they did in 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl. The year they went to the Super Bowl, they only averaged 8 yards per punt return. But what doesn't show up in that stat is, that's all in punt return. So that doesn't include fair catches, right? So that's not when a guy does a fair catch and it's, at his own 8-yard line, or when a guy calls a fair catch and he catches the ball and there's nobody within 20 yards of him, like Craycraft did out in Dallas, or even, earlier in that Dallas game when I think it was Trent Taylor calling for a fair catch and then runs away from the ball and it lands like 3 yards to the side of him and gets down deep and they fumble the ball a couple of plays later and everything else. So it doesn't really show up there. I think when I looked at this, when I'm talking about the return game in general, we're talking punt and kickoff. The biggest difference between the 49ers kickoff return game in 2020 compared to 2019 is they tried to force Jerick McKinnon to be their kickoff returner.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a disaster. He was awful at it. I don't know why they continued to put him out there, other than they were trying to get their money's worth out of the guy. Because in 2019, Richie James Jr. was their kick returner, and he did a really good job at it. And they were one of the better teams in the league. In 2020, they were the fourth worst. They were 29th in terms of kickoff returns. So, that mixed together with an offense that has a lot of issues, and you've got a quarterback who's, you're on your backup quarterback. You can't return the ball past your own 25. Oftentimes, even when they try to return the ball, if they're getting tackled inside that 25, it's a no-go, and it's something that they need to fix. And I think Richie James Jr. has got to be on the roster in 2021, and he's got to be their kick returner.
That'd be great because I love Richie James Jr. and especially in that I guess victory formation, to see him do those backflips would be amazing to continue. And going back to Aiyuk, I understand why you can't use him every single time. Obviously, he is the best receiver that we have. You don't want to risk injury or risk wearing him down, taking on those type of kicks, but I wish they would look at how the Eagles used to use Deshaun Jackson when he was a kick returner, because he was also, one of their best receivers at the time. And they wouldn't use him every single kick return. They would use him when they needed a home run. They would use him when there was they needed a momentum changer, or when there was like an opportunity to get a big play out of it. Like they pinned the guy back in, near the goal line. They pinned the punter back in the goal line, and you could maybe get a touchdown out of it. Like, how would you like to see them utilize Aiyuk? Would you want him to be like an every down punt returner, or more as just like in spot duty when it would be a great opportunity for the team to like maximize it.
I think it's if they're not going to have him be your every down, every kick return guy or punt return guy, then yeah, let's go ahead and throw him out there more than 2 times, in the season. I think that's what they did last year. I think they put him back there a couple of times, and I think he returned a couple of them, and it was pretty successful with those. And he had a few that were for catches, but try to get him involved at least once or twice a game. If it's a tight game or you're behind, throw him out there in those games. If you're blowing a team game, there's no reason to do that, right? But if you're in a tight ball game or you're trailing after the first quarter, do it. Give him out there, give him a shot. Maybe he's going to be a spark that just turns the whole thing around. I know. You go back to, this is old school. John Taylor. He's going to the 49ers Hall of Fame, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go back to 1988 with the 49ers, and they were really struggling about halfway through that season. They were 6-5, and they were playing a Monday night game against Washington at home. And John Taylor gets he catches the ball like deep. I think it was like his own 8-yard line. You're not supposed to catch the ball there and run it, but he does. He ends up making an unbelievable kick return and runs it all the way for a touchdown, and that just completely blew that game open and really changed the whole narrative of the 49ers. They went on from that point to win the division, and we know what happens from there. They go on to win the Super Bowl with him catching the game winner.
Yeah, and it's not like the 49ers don't have that type of talent on their team, right? They got a guy like Brandon Ayuk who used to do that in college. A guy like Ambry Thomas now they just drafted, who's another guy who's had some experience returning the ball. Even that running back that they took, in the 6th round, seems like a speedster. Maybe he could, return some kicks or return some punts as well. It's just weird. I mean, for some reason, Shanahan just seems anti taking the risk. It's just, and I get it. We've seen, it wasn't too long ago where the 49ers were playing the Giants in the NFC Championship game, and we pretty much had the opportunity to win that game, and it was a muffed punt that ended up losing us that game. So I understand, it's a risk reward type thing, and you gotta kind of measure that, but it just seems like we're never taking a risk, and it would be nice to see a little bit more risks in Shanahan, but like I said, I'm not holding my breath on that one. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think somebody over in the comment section said it, and you mentioned it, and I think I did too. If nothing else, if it's a tight game or a big game, throw them in there. See if you can give them a spark. But I don't, and even Ambry Thomas, I know he has the history of returning kicks at Michigan. Heck, he even played a little bit of offense while he was there. But I don't think that again, if they're expecting him to be competing for a starting spot or he's having a key role in the defense, maybe they're not going to want to use him in that role either. It seems like they want to use guys who aren't really they don't expect to do anything else anywhere else on the team to be their returners. We saw it with JaMycal Hasty. We saw it last year, and same thing with Richie James.
Yeah,